Middle Tennessee football is entering a new era in 2024 because no longer is the legendary figure around Blue Raider football still the head coach, and that being Rick Stockstill. He did phenomenal things here with this program, and now it's in the hands of a guy who actually wasn't a coach last season, but will be the head coach of this football team in 2024. A former defensive coordinator in Derek Mason is taking over. What does he bring to the program, and can Middle Tennessee get back into a bowl game here in 2024 behind their star quarterback? You're about to find out my thoughts here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? Here in the booth with Tailgate Nate. Today, I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you back to prediction season. I have over 100 of the 134 teams done. We only have about 30 or so to go. If you're a fan of a Power 4 team, I have a video on my channel. And I just want to thank you so much for watching this video because it does help support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine. Continue to help support my channel. Like, comment, share. Of course, subscribe and ring the bell, especially if you're as big of a college football nerd as I am, because you're going to want to have to hear what I have to say during the season, right? Especially about all the big matchups and things coming up, all the excitement coming with the 2024 college football season. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you ring the bell, continue to watch my videos, and interact with the channel any way you can because it all helps support what I do here on YouTube. And with all that out of the way, guys, let's talk about Blue Raider football here in 2024. We'll take a deep dive into the team's offense, into the defense, and at the end of the video, we'll go through the Blue Raider football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. There are a couple more things, though, before we do start, because right over here will be the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And, of course, for your viewing pleasure, right down there below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. Okay, let's waste no more time. Let's start talking about the Blue Raider offense here in 2024. And overall, it saw some fairly decent things. I mean, yeah, there was some inconsistency issues here and there. The run game definitely was not the best that it could be. The offensive line at many points last season struggled in both run protection and pass protection. And there were just a lot of things that needed to be sorted out here on this offense. And with Rick Stockstill gone, you're, again, implementing a new head coach in Derek Mason, who is a defensive-minded guy. I believe he was a cornerback during his playing days as a former defensive coordinator at both Auburn and Oklahoma State. Didn't coach last year and now back to coach here. There are definitely going to have to be some adjustments that are going to have to be made both offensively and especially defensively to this team as well. But again, we start by talking about the offense. Let's talk about the most important position on the field. It is the quarterback position, and you do lose a couple of them that at least threw one pass for you last season, but neither of these guys threw more than 10 of them. DJ Riles went 7 for 8 for 78 yards, converted wide receiver, transfers out as a quarterback, and Kyle Lau threw one pass, which he completed for -1 yards last season, and he will be gone through the portal as well. You do get, though, one of the most underrated and non-talked about guys throughout the group of 5 quarterback row. It's Nicholas Vadiato. A lot of people call him Nick, but Vadiato is just a really darn good quarterback, guys. Listen to this stat line here. 3,092 yards, 23 touchdowns on 67, right around their percent completion percentage. Now, if you do have a gripe with Vadiato, it is the fact that he does throw quite a fair amount of picks. He threw 13 of them last season, and interceptions have plagued him throughout his career. It's something that, as a very experienced player, he looks to clean up here in 2024. But overall, I mean, you look at his talent as a rusher. Sure, he doesn't average the yards per carry a great amount, but did have 2 rushing touchdowns last year, almost 400 rushing yards, and was the team's second leading rusher last season. Talked about how the run game just kind of wasn't there overall. But Vadiato is a really good quarterback, and is going to be good enough to keep Middle Tennessee in some games that they probably wouldn't be in otherwise if Vadiato was playing his collegiate ball elsewhere. Again, that yards, that completion percentage and everything looks really good for Vadiato. Clean up the interceptions, maybe throw a little bit more touchdowns, and he's got to get a little more help from his offensive line, and we'll talk about some guys that can help him out here in a second. But Vadiato, I think, is a very underrated piece of quarterback that's going to help Middle Tennessee win a fair amount of games this season. Some guys that are going to sit behind him in the quarterback room, well, Luther Richardson, and hopefully saying that last name right, comes in through the portal, and Roman Gagliano is a freshman that enters this program. Hey, no notable losses out of the running back room, and it means everyone comes back. Frank Peasant was your leading rusher, and after early rumblings of entering the transfer portal, I do believe he is coming back. At least he is on the spring football roster on the official Middle Tennessee Athletics website, but he had right around 427 yards, 2 touchdowns on 90 carries last season. Oh, no, sorry, I'm reading the wrong stat line there. That was the stat line of Jaden Krettel. He was the leading rusher last year. My apologies for that. Frank Peasant did have 81 carries, 306 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Peasant hovering right around 4 yards per carry. Krettel was set there on the edge of 5 yards per carry. You also are getting some other very nice pieces back. And that first name was totally butchered there, but is Jakail Middlebrook. He will be coming back as well as Terry Wilkins to provide them some depth. Now, Peasant and Creda will be those two lead backs, and they have to see increased production here if this offense wants to take a step in the right direction in 2024. Wide receiver room, I mean, this is just where you lose everybody from last season. Pretty much everyone that had a solid hand in this wide receiver room from last season is gone. And that includes, your top three leading rushers out of the wide, or I should say your leading receivers, not leading rushers, your leading receivers out of the wide receiver room. Elijah Metcalf is gone, had 634 yards, team high 6 touchdowns, and team high 54 catches last season. Justin Olsen is gone, Kalani Norris, all three of those guys are entering the transfer portal, and it doesn't stop there. DJ England Chisholm is gone, fourth leading receiver at 347 yards. By the way, Olsen had 450 yards last season. Zach Dobson and Jeremy Tate, both of those guys are gone as well. Your fifth and sixth leading receivers from last season, and all three of those latter guys, England, Chisholm, Dobson, and Tate, have now all graduated. They no longer have any more eligibility, no college football for them. So you lose 6 guys out of this wide receiver room that had at least 50 receiving yards last season. Again, DJ Riles was another guy that had 58 yards last year. Now, you do still get a guy back that had 100 receiving yards, and Peasant and Credle, both out of the backfield, had 100 receiving yards. Javonte Sherman is coming back, as well as Kellen Stewart, and then just some depth pieces that really didn't see a whole lot of playing time last year are going to have to play some really big roles in the offense this season. Cameron Lacey and Ethan Crate. Now, these are all very talented players in their own right, but when you lose that much production out of the wide receiver room, it's going to be really, really hard to sort of get that production back. Well, Middle Tennessee did dive into the transfer portal, and they did pick out some names. Omari Kelly is coming into the program from Auburn. Gamarian Carter is over from Vanderbilt. You also are getting Hayes Sutton over from Duke as well. So some transfers coming in to help supplement all that they lost. Now, notice I did not talk about any sort of leading receiver. Well, that's because the lead receiver off the team last year is coming back because he's out of the tight end room. It's Holden Willis, 697 yards, 5 touchdowns on 46 catches, was a really good piece of this offense last year and should be, again, all things considered, here in 2024. Jacob Coleman and Taharan Sudarith will also be back as well. And again, hopefully I'm saying that last name right. Apologies if I did butcher it. Now on the offensive line, this is one of the position groupings in this offense that has got to get better. It's losing some pretty good talent here. And my apologies there, that first name not gone to the NFL, just forgot to change my wording on that. Jockey Graham is gone due to graduation, so no more college football for him. Pretty important piece of the offensive line from last season is gone. You lose 2 more guys to the transfer portal. Keelan Rutledge is going to be going over now to Georgia Tech, and then Sterling Porcher, not Procher, it is Porcher. He has gone over to Texas Tech. You do get a couple guys in the transfer portal to come help try to cushion those blows in DeMar Crawford and Dumela Knox, as well as a couple other guys like Ellis Adams and Marcus Miller that enter through various programs. And a lot of guys do come back here. Julius Pierce, Mateo Guevara, Ethan Ellis, Jashun Bodiford, and Morgan Scott all return. But again, guys, this is an offensive line that has got to see their improvements this season. They allowed, I believe, over 30 sacks last year. They weren't strong in run protection. Peasant and Credle have to take a step in the right direction this year. The wide receiver room, I mean, look, Holden Willis coming back at tight end is excellent, but what are these wide receivers going to look like this year? You lost a ton of production from last year. Who is going to help Nick Vadiato out with this offense? Because Vadiato, look, is a really good quarterback in my eyes, and I think he's a very underrated piece. And I think alone he can win this team some games this season. He's got to get some help from this offense, got to get some help from the skill position room. How did the transfers fit in? What does the offensive line look like? There are a ton of questions on the offense for Middle Tennessee that honestly I can't wait to see get answered around Vadiato, including him improving his own play here in 2024. But when you talk about Middle Tennessee, you got to talk about this defense. And honestly, well, it had its ups and downs last season. I mean, overall, a bright spot, yes, they allowed under 400 yards per game, but the defense did not help this team's cause in winning many games last season. And I mean, you take a look at that list of names there on the left-hand side of your screen, there is going to be a ton of talent that is leaving this defense. We'll start out with the defensive line because there are a ton of guys, especially gone through the transfer portal. Now, we'll start out with a guy that is graduating. He goes by the name of Jordan Branch. I guess not goes by the name. Obviously, that is his name. 31 tackles for him last season, along with 3 pass defended. Really big parts of the defensive front from last year. He is going to be gone. Through the transfer portal, Quindarius Dunnigan, Marley Cook, Zaylin Wood, and Richard Kinley are also all gone here off of this team. Dunnigan had 3 sacks last year. Kinley had 3 sacks. there last season. And the other guys were just some pretty solid tacklers here on this defense. Wood and Cook, both of them had right around 15 tackles last year. Oh, my apologies. Wood had 16. He is also a guy that had 3 sacks. And then Cook, 22 sacks or 22 tackles with a sack here last season. So you're losing a lot of production off the defensive line. Coming back, though, is a guy by the name of James Stewart, who I think could end up being a really big part here. Had 15 tackles last season. I believe he is the leading returning tackler among defensive linemen. And so a lot of guys are going to have to play some bigger roles here as they were depth pieces last year. DeMonte Smith, Brandon Buckner, Ralph Mency, Anthony Bynum, and so many others are going to have to play some bigger roles here. You do get Felix Hickson over from the portal. He's going to help give you some depth. But again, a defensive line that's got to see a lot of holes filled this season. Linebacker room was going to be the same thing as well. Jonathan Butler is gone due to graduation. He had 45 tackles in the sack last year, and you lose a couple other guys to the portal and Sam Brumfield, your leading tackler, and also led the team in sacks, 82 tackles, 3.5 sacks last season. Raquan Hartley is going to be coming back, or I should say he is gone as well. 38 tackles. He's off through the transfer portal. And two other guys here by the names of Devin Curtis and Drew Francis. They were also two guys that had entered their names in the portal. But again, much like we saw in that the running back room with Frank Peasant. Those two guys are on the spring roster, and to my knowledge, they are coming back. You take a look at what those two guys did last year. Curtis had 45 tackles. Francis had 44 tackles and 2 sacks. You have to talk about Parker Hughes, though. 53 tackles, 2.5 sacks for him on this defense last year. And Jalen Davis is another big returning piece of the linebacker room who had 18 tackles last season. Defensive backs, again, losing some really good talent here. Teldrick Ross is gone due to graduation out of the cornerback room. 48 tackles, 5 pass defended for him. And Deontay Stanley will be leaving this defensive back grouping as well. 21 tackles, 3 pass defended, and a pick last season. You lose even more in the safety room when Trough Llewellyn is gone. Your third leading tackler at 64 tackles, 3 pass defended, led the team with 3 picks. Jacoby Thomas gone as well through the transfer portal. Second leading tackler, 5 pass defended, 71 tackles. A lot of really good talent leaves this defense overall, especially in that defensive back room as I just listed. Tyrell Rabbey, James Shellman, and Jalen Jackson will return in the cornerback room, among some other names that you could list there as well. While Marvay Myers, who honestly is a really solid returning player here for this defense, 18 tackles, did have 2 picks last season. Rabbey also had 2 picks last year, so he comes back in the safety room as well as DeAre McDonald, Chris Johnson, and Ricky Smith back here as well, while you do get some safeties over from the portal, and Brendan Harris and James Mond. A couple of those guys will end up playing nickel as well, and that's all throughout the safety room. Kickers are people too. We have to show them some love. Miles Tillman is gone due to, I believe, graduation. I think he had another year or 2 of eligibility, but I don't think he's going to utilize it. He is not on the spring roster, not on the RLAD's depth chart. So to my knowledge, I believe he is gone. Let me know the real reason he may be gone in the comment section below. Trey Turk will be back to do the punting duties, and Zeke Rankin is back to do the kicking duties here for the Blue Raiders this season. So overall, you take a look at this defense, and again, a lot of holes are going to need to be filled. You need some guys to step up and play a lot bigger roles this season, especially on that defensive front. Linebackers, I actually think you got a really solid group of linebackers here with Curtis and Francis back due to their early rumblings there in the portal with their return, a couple with Parker Hughes, Jalen Davis. I think you got a good linebacker room, but the defensive line's going to have to take some jumps forward. The secondary's going to have to take some jumps forward. And overall, this is the defense that also just has to see the pieces fit together here in 2024 for the puzzle to be complete. Now, when you take a look at this team's schedule, now I know Conference USA is not the toughest one here, but for the talent here and with all the question marks they have, this can prove to be a pretty tough schedule. Any game at home is going to be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics or that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Blue Raiders are going to win fairly easily, while any game in yellow is a close competitive one that I still see the Blue Raiders being able to win. Any game in red is a loss, but their schedule will not start out that way. I think they're going to be able to get a win in that first game of the season against the Tennessee Tech Golden Eagles. Tennessee Tech is an FCS level team, and this week, or I should say right after this week, I do believe they have to go on the road in Sanford Stadium and play Georgia. Ouch. Middle Tennessee's really talented, and this is going to be a very nice game or I should say, Middle Tennessee's got a lot of good talent on it, and this is still going to be sort of that game where, look, Vadiato's going to look to settle in for the season, going to look to form chemistry with his new wide receivers. How does the run game look? How does the defensive line look? How do a lot of the pieces fit in here for Middle Tennessee? Should be a game they win, should be a good game to sort of try things out for Derek Mason and company before the real test begins, because you got to go on the road and play Ole Miss the very next week, and I just don't see a win in that one. Lane Kiffin's squad is going to be really good this season. Jackson Dart is back. He's, I mean, loaded with running back talent, wide receiver talent. Ole Miss was one of the big winners in the transfer portal, and that defense, I think, is going to improve substantially this season. I mean, just no further explanation needed. Road loss to Ole Miss there in week 2, but then you get this game here in week 3, and I think this is where things start to get a little interesting if you are talking about the Middle Tennessee schedule. And the only reason that I do say that is because, look, Western Kentucky is still going to be a very talented team here this season. They still got a lot of very good pieces. TJ Finley is coming in from the portal. Go look at the season he had at Texas State last season. He's going to try to fill the shoes here of Austin Reed. You get Elijah Young as well as some other really good pieces back in the wide receiver room, although you do lose a really solid piece off of last year's team. And the piece that I'm thinking of, obviously, is wide receiver Malachi Corley. And you just lose a lot of really solid talent off of Western Kentucky's team. And I think while some of the pieces try to fit in there, especially when you take a look at some of the pieces in the defensive back room that are transferring in, I think Middle Tennessee's got enough talent here. And look, the wide receiver room is being completely overhauled from last year. I get that. But I said at the beginning of this video that Vadiato, I think especially early on, is going to be good enough to win Middle Tennessee a game or two that they probably shouldn't. And I see this game right here, the game against Western Kentucky at home, being the prime example of that. And I think the linebackers for Middle Tennessee are going to have a pretty good game, but Vadiato controls it. He helps Middle Tennessee's case the most. And I just see Western Kentucky maybe losing a game or two that they shouldn't while they try to adjust to all the new talent they have coming in. Now, it's a lot of good talent. I think Finley's going to have a good year. I think the secondary rounds in the form as the season goes along. But Middle Tennessee gets an early upset here as they look to continue their quest towards a bowl game. But it's going to get a few bumps in the road here. I think you lose to Duke. And look, even though Riley Leonard is gone and a lot of solid pieces are off that Duke team, hey, you get a really talented player coming in there over from Texas, whose name is escaping my mind right now. One second. Malik Murphy, that's it. I don't know why I couldn't think of his name, but he's going to be a really good quarterback for Duke this year. They still got a lot of really solid pieces, even with all the talent they lose. Yeah, the defense is going to need some question marks filled, and of course, Manny Diaz takes over from Mike Elko as head coach, but they're still going to be a talented team. Definitely a top half team in the ACC this year, and it's a team that I think Middle Tennessee is going to lose to, and I think they'll lose to Memphis to round out their non-conference slate. Memphis is going to be one of the best group of 5 teams this season. A very experienced and very good quarterback in Seth Hennigan is back. Ryan Silverfield's group is extremely talented, extremely skillful. They got a lot of speed, and I just think it's a bad matchup for Middle Tennessee, so that's a loss there, but you do get your first bye week of the season before you have to finish out the slate in in conference play. 7 straight games in Conference USA play. And I think it starts out with the win against the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs, a team that just was not very good last season. And well, if you take a look at their roster this season, there's not a whole lot to get excited about comparatively speaking to last year. Yes, there are some good transfers coming in, especially on that offensive line that's going to help boost that group, but you lose Hank Bachmeier. He's gone to the portal. I believe he's off there to Wake Forest. Jack Turner will be taking over at quarterback, and the defense just doesn't have a whole lot to get excited about, although it is going to be very experienced this season. I don't know. I'm just not the biggest fan of the Bulldogs roster this year. I think Middle Tennessee is better. They got the better quarterback in Nick Vadiato. That'll help them here win this game. And I think they will get a second straight win when they beat Kennesaw State. Not a very good team in the FCS regards last season. Even though they have a lot of returning production, I just don't see Kennesaw State adjusting to the FBS level as quickly as some of their other counterparts like James Madison and Jacksonville State has, and even Sam Houston, who obviously is the one team that Middle Tennessee will not play in Conference USA play, that still has to get adjusted to the FBS level as well. I believe they were 3-8, 3-9, somewhere along those lines last season, and I don't think much is going to change for the Owls this year. Got a lot of good returning talent. Some good pieces are gone through the portal. It's just going to be a win for the Blue Raiders here, in my opinion. But then things get hard here for this program. You got to find 2 wins in the back 5 games here of this schedule. And I think this first one against Jacksonville State is going to be a loss. The Gamecocks, that transition between the FCS to FBS was extremely smooth, and I expect them to continue their success here in 2024. Logan Smothers is coming back at quarterback. He was obviously a Power 4 quarterback with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. A lot of really good wide receiver pieces in through the portal. Defense returns a ton of experienced talent. They'll be one of the better teams in Conference USA. It's a loss for Nick Vadiato and company, and I also see them going on the road and losing to UTEP. Now, I know this one may shock some people because, look, UTEP probably not going to end up being that great of a team here in 2024. They lost even more talent gone through the portal. Some guys even going off there to the NFL. I do believe in a lot more talent graduating as well. But when I take a look at UTEP, I still see some solid pieces. Cade McConnell at quarterback. You got some good wide receiver pieces, a lot of them transferring in, a ton of defensive pieces coming into that team as well. And I still think UTEP is going to be. I still think they have the roster to be competitive enough with a team like Middle Tennessee. And I think there are going to be one or two games this season, especially some of these road games against teams that if you had them at home, you would probably beat them, much like UTEP and another team we're going to talk about here in just a little bit, where you're going to see your struggles. This is a game I have you seeing your struggles, and a game that I do have you losing. And I also have you losing to the Liberty Flames. Look, Caden Salter's back. Quentin Cooley is back. Need I make much more of an argument than that? Yes, some defensive pieces leave, but Liberty is very much so in contention for being that Group of 5 representative in the college football playoff. Last two games here, you got to win both of them to make a bowl game. I think you start out well against New Mexico State Aggies. Quite simply put, that team's going to go over an entire rebuild this season. Jerry Kill, head coach, gone. Diego Pavia at quarterback, gone. Star Thomas, a literal star at the running back position, gone. So many wide receivers, defensive pieces, offensive linemen, all gone. That's a team that just loses a ton of talent, and I don't see them being that great this season. And then the game against FIU, another one where I think the struggles pop up, and FIU is a team that was a lot better than people expected last season. I think that'll continue here in 2024, and the team led at quarterback by Keontae Jenkins has some really solid offensive and defensive talent. And again, another game where Middle Tennessee see their struggles. So 5-7 for the Blue Raiders. You do have a 500 record in conference play. I just think it's going to take a little time for Derek Mason to get adjusted back to coaching. I think it's going to take some time to get his system implemented here. This feels like the year for Middle Tennessee to make that push with Nick Vadiato at quarterback, but too many question marks for me in the wide receiver room, defensive line, secondary. I got them just being shy of a bowl game. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder, and we'll talk about the Arkansas State Red Wolves here in my next video. Goodbye.